Hello and welcome to Follow Everton. Unfortunately, for the moment, Chad, his kids' football competition, he did better than expected, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to join. So I wanted to at least do something really short here to give you guys some content. I know it's just past midnight there in on Sunday for us in Australia. It's Monday morning here at about 7 a.m. Wanted so thinking about some topics. We did a lot of breaking news articles. I have not checked any news overnight, so if there's anything breaking, let me know, and I'm very happy to live react here in the comments. So bedtime for you, Emma. Or bedtime is 7 a.m. I am very confused on my jet lag schedule, but happy to have some of the regulars, including yourself, Emma, join. Um, so I think some of the key things to look at are Everton doing? How are we doing on the season? Are we making progress? Are we exactly where we were last year? And even statistically, are we doing better or worse? So I was trying to pull this up through the Sofa Score app, but I think for so, we're not sure exactly the reason, but off the phone app, it's a little bit easier. So what I might do is I might talk to some of the high level statistics we have for Everton. If I read off the phone and look at the anti-social, apologies there, but I think that might be the easiest way to do it. So far this season on we've played seven. If we compare to the 38 last year, we have scored seven this year. Last year we scored 40. So we're actually on a goals per game ratio, scoring less than we did last year, which to me is quite a surprising feat, knowing that we felt that we could not manufacture a goal last year, and we have scored a few. So it's uh it's an odd feeling, but especially early on, if you have successive clean sheets. I guess it was Newcastle and Tottenham come to mind, but if we're not scoring many goals on those matches, scoring two against Bournemouth, was it two against Crystal Palace? All of a sudden, it doesn't feel like they stack up. But at the moment, at least statistically, and we haven't had a tough run of fixtures in that respect either. Maybe scoring one goal away at Aston Villa, a goal or two goals even at Aston Villa doesn't seem to average out too well. So on the goal scoring front, we are looking in some ways a lot more promising than we did last season, but it is still early. We have a DCL that seems to be back in good form. Ilman and Jai is looking dangerous. We have not really had a whole lot of set play magic yet, and we have had two goals from Dwight McNeil. So in some ways, we've gotten goals where we've expected them, but we haven't had that variety yet. On terms of on the other side, I think is the biggest concern. Not having Jared Branthwaite in the side, Mikolenko seeming to have either lost a step or lost confidence, marking on the back post. James Tarkovsky playing through that injury, and or because of the lack of a solid defensive partner that he was comfortable with in Branthwaite using Keane. They seem to be getting a little bit stuck there in the middle, getting each other's way and lacking some leg speed. And then on assuredness at right back, that's where the real issues seem to be coming in. So defensively, last year we had 13 clean sheets, and I don't see us pulling that off. We've had one so far, which was a lucky one against Newcastle last week. But on a goals per game or goals conceded per game, we had 2.1 goals conceded per game so far. Last season was 1.3, which was one of the best defenses in the league. And I think for those that watch, there's a few reasons for it. Partly, I think, are we helping? Are we controlling the ball enough further up the pitch, wearing out our squad? Do we have? Are we playing? And this is the Dyche method. Are we playing so narrow that we're now dealing with this setup where squads know what you all you have to do is do a quick switch to the opposite post, have a late runner come into the box, and you have the likes of sometimes Ashley Young, sometimes Mikolenko trying to mark up, and all of a sudden they if they're right on their game, and Ashley Young did a couple really good ones like this, where on the game against Newcastle they're crossing over. You have to watch your back post and knock it out. But it's a testing method, and at the moment we're also seeming to be struggling just generally with set plays at all. So a lot of work there, and I know we mentioned that there's a lot of tactical restructuring in terms of coaching and management and scouting. So maybe this is an opportunity. Um, I'm not sure I've heard anything on Njai. If anyone here in the comments has, I'm more than happy to talk here. So, but I haven't heard anything, Emma. I got up about 20 minutes ago, so didn't have time to check the news there. But if anyone does have any time to read up, please let me know. So I think the big concern I think we've got right now, of course, is if Branthwaite isn't in the squad, I thoroughly worry we are not winning enough matches. We don't have that. We're very reactive versus responsive. We're not winning the ball back consistently in defense, and all of a sudden we also aren't able to hold the ball up, other than the likes of Element and Jai. But that is something that is a bit unique for us. So we now have a couple outlets, because you think last season we had Jack Harrison, Abdoulaye Decore, McNeil, and then we weren't. DCL was okay on his own, but if it's just him, it's complete isolation. The ball turns over, and that's not his fault. We're playing hoofball, and that's just that. Even if you chest it down, if you're getting double teamed by a couple center halves, there's no win there. So being able to do some through balls on that left side on that channel, and McNeil feeling more comfortable in the center, being able to feed the ball to that left side in Njai, I think has given us an extra look. But to that point, is Njai injured? Not sure. Hopefully we hear something, and if any of you here in the chat, I can live react to that. But beyond that, I think we seem to have different avenues of scoring this year. Last year it was we hoped for set plays, but we seem to manufacture a whole bunch of goals right at the end of that season. We were scoring. We had a few results earlier in the season when we got a 3-0 against Bournemouth, but 2 to 3 goal matches just seemed few and far between. If we scored, if a team scored 1 goal against us at Goodison, we shut down, thinking we had no chance of winning this match, because it was either 1 goal or done. So it seems, at least if we do score this year, we can score them in bunches, even if the average is lower. So the other thing I wanted to look at then was if we decided to look at some of the player. I've made myself a tier builder list, so you guys are more than welcome to judge, rate, and interact with me on this. I have a slightly unresponsive screen, but the player rankings that I drafted up for the season are here. So I basically said irrelevant, meaning either haven't played enough to be considered, not they're an irrelevant player, because, well, that's what the rankings are for. So why don't we start with Jordan Pickford? I think generally speaking, he played excellent last week against Newcastle, but he hasn't been out of his box that much, but it's also tricky for him. A lot of goals you can say aren't his fault, but at the same time, is he helping a struggling defense, keeping them organized? Is he accountable for a Keane Tarkovsky mismatch in the middle? I guess he exists, but I've been quite underwhelmed with him in that respect, because we used, and maybe that's the expectation of having a superstar in the likes of a Jordan Pickford. So I'm used to him just being the 8 or 9 outstanding man of the match. Last week he certainly was that, and I think maybe he's just getting back into that groove now. But for me, he hasn't really stuck out this season. If we look at Nathan Patterson, let's be honest, he has not played enough. He hasn't played at all. Under 21s, we really want to be seeing him and the likes of a Roman Dixon challenging in that position. Right now, it really just hasn't happened yet. So we're hoping to see him back in. But the other thing we know is we don't expect to see him getting opportunities under the Dice system. But maybe we're all going to get fooled at some point because Dice has the ability of switching that up on us. So let's move to our favorite Michael and Michael Keane. So I think, funny enough, if 6 is a pass, I don't think he's been truly terrible, but he also hasn't. I think he's been part of the mix-ups that resulting in a lot of late goals for us. So it's kind of tricky to give him anything more than basically a pass or just under for me. But at the Premier League level, I think if Branthwaite's in the squad rather than him, we're seeing results switch dramatically. So to say that he's getting anything more than a 5 is a bit of a reach for me. But at the same time, I don't think James Tarkovsky is anywhere near his top form. He's been, I think we know that he's losing a bit on leg speed, and we kind of knew that last year when he played a high line. Sometimes we got caught out, but at the same time, if he's playing through that injury, he seems to be a step, if not two, behind where he was last season. Yes, it's early, but Taki seems like he needs more replacements throughout the year. So Dwight McNeil has been a really interesting flash in the pan to me. I think with his goal involvements and the 2 goals he scored against was it Crystal Palace, I think he's really stood out to me this year as being one of the key contributors. So for me, I think a 7 is probably about right. Scoring goals, getting assists, goal involvements, and the Premier League talking about someone on the Everton statistics board at all says a lot about his contribution to date. It might be again, but it might just be a little bit too early to say where he sits. But to me, I've been quite happy with where he's been throughout this season. So Oro Mangala, as we know, has came in relatively late to the setup. He's been quite comfortable on the ball, but and if we are not playing in a low block, I think is quite impactful on the team. But he hasn't really pulled up any trees at the same time. So to me, I think Mangala he's earned a spot in many respects, but beyond that, I'm not really too sure what to make of him so far. So this might be a controversial view for a few of you guys, but I don't think DCL has underperformed a great deal this season. I think he's been quite consistent, shown a lot of energy up front, and been a lone target man. And having some supply with the likes of Illiman and Jai, Dwight McNeil, and just a different look up front, I think that's really helped DCL this season. So far, if he's either on the score sheet or creating chances, he's looked a better version of himself. So for now, I'd give him a 7, but very quickly he could drop down the ranks if he doesn't keep this form up and doesn't convert those more chances. The one that I think has been the most exciting player for Everton, who's really impacted the squad, is an Illiman Njai. I think to say he's getting 8 out of 10 every week might be a stretch, but for the purposes of this, I think to me he's the standout player. He's either a high 7 or a low 8. Again, hopefully this injury scare is not too bad for him, but what I'm quite excited to see is someone that's able to turn on a dime, hold the ball, and basically pull in the entire right side of, I guess, the right defensive central midfielder if our opposition is playing that 4-2-3-1 formation. The right fullback might get pulled in, and the right centre back gets dragged and opens up space in that channel for the likes of a McNeil to come in and DCL, because Njai is doing that well. He has been getting subbed off early. Is that just a dice thing, or is he actually capable of playing more? Really hard to say. One moment here. And we have we have Ilman and Jai here at an 8 out of 10. Harrison, well, he had a couple games where he had some excellent crosses, but to me, he's been relatively anonymous a lot of these games. But what I will say, and the reason I think he stays in this squad, isn't the matter of his lack of going forward. I think half of his product is actually about being a defensive support when we don't even have a settled right back position. So it's he's somewhere in this 5 to 6 out of 10 for me. A lot of that bowed into is his performance. If you're saying he's doing the defensive work, okay, he's had a couple improved attacking results here, but also not doing anything special here. I wasn't, and for Jal Virginia, for those that watched the match against Southampton, please feel free to interject, but I wasn't able to watch that one. I know he did not save any of the penalties in the shootout, but it's a bit tricky to say that's always someone's fault. But if he's only played a match or so, I can either put him in the irrelevant field, which seems a bit unfair if he's at least played a fixture. But to me, it just hasn't really he hasn't stood out this season. But then again, he did have a good run last season in some of our cups, so I think still a really good backup option. Beto, to say he's done anything other than be an unimpactful sub with energy so far would be a lie. But I think a lot of that for him, you feel like he just needs time and match fitness that he just hasn't been given, but has really underwhelmed for me so far this season. Jake O'Brien, I think, is going to be in a similar category to these guys here, where I think not that he's done better or worse, but he hasn't really had the opportunity to shine so far. He came in as a sub late on one match when the result was already determined. So I think he sits in a very similar category, but I think he is very unproven to this point, and I would like to see a whole bunch more of O'Brien. He's got the leg speed, he's got the and a lot of growth potential that I just don't see happening from the likes of Keane and Tarkovsky. May not have growth potential, but he does have the ability to come back on or come back to some form there. So moving on, we have Abdoulaye Doucouré. Again, at moments, we know what Doucouré is capable of at his highs, but his let's say resting performance rate is quite tiring for a lot of us. And for me, outside of that defensive work that he can do when they've pulled him into the central midfield spot when we're playing the low block and intercepting, he again has just not been that player for us. And when I talked with Chad on the post match, talking about ratings for Newcastle, if he had scored that header, all of a sudden we'd probably bump him up a couple of spots because he's making an impact. But he a necessary player for squad depth, but I think it's unless he really starts shaking things up and getting on the score sheet again, it's time that we move on from Abdoulaye Doucouré and looking for other midfield starting options. Maybe that's James Garner, maybe that's Tim Irigbunam, or James Garner there, or even Oral Mangala. So another exciting player and prospect, looking really good in preseason before that injury. He's had his surgery, and we expect and hope to see him back at some point. But for right now, if he hasn't played, I'm keeping him in that category there. So a player that might be a bit of a surprise for a few of you, Ashley Young. He depends on the game in which we play him, but what he has been able to do now is contribute to a few goal involvements from fullback. He's played a few positions when we needed him to be in that spot. He's looked arguably equally comfortable to the likes of Michael Keane, Vitaly Mikalenko, and it looks like we have a Mr. Adam from not across the pond, just down the highway from me. So welcome, Adam.
How you going, mate?
Yeah, doing good. So not sure if you've were able to follow along. What I've been doing is basically pulling up some of the Everton players to date, and putting them in a ranking spot to see where you'd sit them. So I've of course given the option for eights and nines out of 10, but not too many players have really fit there for me. So what I've done instead is say, hey, so far I think Illiman and Jai has probably been our standout. DCL, he may not be on the score sheet as much as we'd want, but he's been quite often isolated, and we're seeing uh, a more dangerous attacking front line, partly because of Njai, but I think he's been doing quite well there. McNeil, he's had some rough ones in there, but when he's been on, and guess what? If you've played 7 matches and you've had a couple results like the ones he had against Crystal Palace with that brace, giving him a 7 out of 10, I don't think is an unfair spot to put him in. Pickford, I'm not sure what you think on him so far this year, but he he had a
I think
he had
I
a
think he started off pretty shaky, but I think he's had probably that game against Newcastle and the penalty he saved against Gordon. Like, yeah, he's definitely redeeming himself of late. Ashley Young's like last 2 games, he's got like 2 assists. So I'm definitely not like one for Ashley Young. But yeah, he is doing a job there at the moment. Is what we've needed from him from the start since when he came in. So um, yeah, it's nice to see Jack Harrison actually do some like that assist for McNeil in the Crystal Palace game. That was quite good.
yeah, that was
I
exciting
want
to
to see a
see.
bit more from him from that, like that sort of get the ball out from his feet and whip across in because we know he can do that. His downside is that he doesn't have the pace and the trickery to get around fast around players and whip a ball in. So I think his best sort of attribute is just to get the ball out from his feet. He is skillful, he's got a good touch, but yeah, he just needs to get those crosses into Calvert-Lewin and potentially just switch the play to the other side to McNeil, and that's kind of what he did in that instance.
Yeah, and I think there are moments when Harrison is getting these goal involvements. At the end of last season, according to statistics, he was not the last person to have touched the ball before the goal scorer knocked it in. But at the same time, his involvement was obvious for a few of our goals in that late run. And okay, he had that goal involvement for McNeil this season, but I think it's that same. Okay, he's doing the defensive work, chasing because we don't have a right back. But if we did have a solid right back, let's say Seamus Coleman from a decade ago, where he had those legs on, a bit more pace with him, and he wasn't coming off injured. It wasn't Ashley Young or Roman Dixon, so we didn't have to double up on their left-sided players. And Harrison had a free roam. Do you think we'd see a better performance out of him? Probably, but I feel a 5 to 6 is about right. Now, my ratings, Adam, I'm sure you've got your own method, but a 6 out of 10 is basically like a professional pass to me. 5 is
Yeah, yeah. I'd probably put O'Brien in the 6 category. I feel like when he's come on and done a job, I don't think he's done too far off it. So I'd
yeah.
probably punch him up to a 6.
The tricky part for him is I
The
just have
rest,
to
I'd
like
probably
Virginia has not done terribly, but he also on the matches he has done, like he wasn't even. I don't think he was close to any of the penalty saves on that shootout. But it's tricky to gauge a keeper when they've just existed at the same time and been a part of it. But Beto, I think, has really underperformed. Kure, he sometimes has an impact, but at the same time, he's been really flat. I've put the center halves both as underperforming, but kind of equally. I don't think in different aspects, each one is doing better or worse than the other. So I've left them there. For Vitaly Mikalenko, I think I know where Ryan would put him, but where do you think? What do you think of Mikalenko this season?
I think he's been subpar, I would say.
Yeah, I think
I'd
he
probably go
probably.
for the 5 category as well. Yep.
What really?
Coleman, yeah, you probably can't do too much with him. He hasn't played too much. I'd probably say I think he's played maybe 1.5
Yeah,
games. Yeah, I'd probably say relevant. I wouldn't say it's too much to judge at this stage.
yeah. James
Garner Gay
Garner.
would probably, but yeah,
He's
Garner
been.
Gay. Yeah, I think he's been all right. I wouldn't say he's done a foot too wrong. So
Well, what's interesting with him when on the Newcastle match, he you remembered again. He wins us the ball back, but oh my, can he not score?
yeah.
And
Do you remember in the Newcastle game? I don't know if you remember, but Ashley Young whipped across into Dwight McNeil, and he almost scored exactly the same type of goal that Harrison popped into him, and he did 2 touches and volleyed on his left. Do you remember that Ashley Young whipped in across, and it was the same position that he scored from against Crystal
and then
Palace the week
McNeil,
before?
was that the one where he had the low grass cutter just on the bottom right post?
He
Is that
did,
the one?
yeah. He didn't
Yeah,
get a clean contact and fluffed it. But yeah, it was essentially exactly the same play.
yeah. And I think to
I mean,
your
is that
point,
something we're working on in training? Like I like to, that's something.
so Ashley Young is a proven professional, and I know these are kind of eye rolly words for a lot of people, but he knows how. If he's well drilled, he'll follow instruction. The problem for him has to be, does he have the pace to keep up with a striker, um, or a winger that's new has blistering pace? The answer is no. If the squad doesn't have, that we're versing, likes to play narrow up the middle, or has, let's say, more like wide midfielders rather than pacey wingers, I think Ashley Young can do quite a job, or quite a reasonable job under the circumstances. But the reality is, I want to see players other than Ashley Young be playing, breed in the likes of a Roman Dixon rather than, well, Ashley Young secure. I want to see development versus the status quo. But Ashley Young isn't the worst player to have right now, and that's weird to say, but if we are struggling with injuries, Ashley Young is, and if the players come back fully fit, and Ashley Young goes to the bench, then Ashley Young has done what we've got him for.
Yeah, correct. It's not an ideal scenario, but I feel like when the freaking crew come in and they do this massive overhaul and potentially a squad overhaul as well, we'll probably see some sort of rearrangement in those areas in the left back and the right back, and we'll have some competition for Miko and potentially a solidified right back position. So
Yeah.
who have we got up next?
Now we have Harrison Armstrong. Is he in this? We haven't seen enough of him. Oh no, sorry. This is
Was that Lindstrom?
Sorry, no. Yes, Lindstrom. Armstrong's coming up in a minute. They've got really small photos. So, what do you think about Jesper Lindstrom?
I think the goal he scored in pre-season was good. We can see there's a very technical player, but I think in this style of the Dyche style and the defensive, he's got to have a big defensive game on him as well. I'd say, probably put him in 5.
And so he was the player that got subbed off for
Correct, for
Harrison.
Harrison, yeah.
And Harrison was that impact player when we had that rousing,
which we haven't
halftime.
really seen too much from Harrison, being an actual impact player and doing something of that type of caliber. Pass control, he's obviously got that in his locker, and it's, I'm not really shocked that he's done it. It's just we should be seeing more of that if he's got that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's unfair to call it a game of tortoise and the hare, but these two, we have steady, let's call it, in Harrison, and then Jesper Lindstrom is has a lot of pace on him and has a lot of impact potential, but it's very streaky. But in a way, that's Harrison too, because Jesper Lindstrom, there have been a few matches now when he has been playing where he is open at the back post and he's just scuffed glorious goal scoring opportunities. If he scored them, he'd be way up in the in our tally here, I think, because he could easily have had 2, if not 3 goals, I think, from some of those back post opportunities when he has been playing. And when even if he's not scoring them, he's part of a really interesting looking front four with if he's on the right and you have McNeil in the middle, and Jai on the left and DCL up front, that has been causing teams a lot of problems. The main thing for Jesper is you need to score your chances. And if
Yeah,
not,
he needs to convert. And what was that? There was a open or a bit of an open opportunity. Was it in the Crystal Palace game? Essentially, I think it may have been in the first half. There was a cross put into him from I think the left.
Yeah, that I believe it was Crystal Palace, but even the match before that, he was missing. Again, it's like these crosses right to him, and he's missing volleys. And half the time, it's Decore, which you can't blame the guy for, but someone going up for like a header, and then he doesn't get it. All he does is bump into the player trying to score, and it's like Decore, just get out of the way. But it's one of those. Unless you're there on the pitch, you have no idea if these players are actually telling the other one to get out of the way, and Decore is just goal hungry and instinctive,
Yeah.
or is he just messing it up? But I think that was the one I'm thinking of was impacting a McNeil strike. But for Lindstrom, he's had some chances, has not converted. But I think I'm excited to see what he does throughout the rest of this season.
Yeah. What about Brentford?
So to me, I think it's only one match. If you judge him on one match, immediate impact, because we scored, he was intercepting, and all of a sudden Everton looked a different squad.
Yeah, he looked shaky for the first 10, 15 minutes, but I think after that, once he got his feet again, he was looked like he never left. So he's never been injured. So for an injured player to come back and do that was impressive.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've only seen him the one time. But I'm also, maybe it's what do you call it? Recency bias. But one match involvement, one win for Branthwaite. So
yeah, who we got next? James Garner.
Ooh.
He looked a little bit shaky in that first game. He played out of position at right back, but I felt like against Newcastle he did a job. So I'll probably say 6. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people thinking quite highly of how he did against Newcastle, and I agree. A lot his cross.
I wouldn't say that's high. I think that's what we should expect from a right back who plays for Everton. That's in my opinion.
What, a 6 out of 10?
No, just his performance. Like, he wasn't. I thought he was good. I wouldn't say he was outstanding. And it's the best game he's played in an Everton shirt. I would say that he played well. And did he have a huge impact on the game? I don't think he did, but he did a job. Yeah. So if every player does their job and they perform like we need to, and like the tactic that's being carried out and set by the manager, then you would think that we would win matches. But it doesn't really happen like that.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about, Adam, is the James Garner delivery from that wide position is also something
from Decore's header. Yeah, if it was onside, then that would have been a goal, and you would have been talking about his assist and Decore's goal. So Decore would have been potentially a 5, and Garner would have maybe been a 7. So
or higher actually if we won 1-0. So yeah, and the other piece of
the perceptive can change quite a bit based off those two impacts. Like
I like his delivery from out wide. And he's also.
He's done that a few times from out wide. I think even on the right wing, he's had a few really good crosses that have come in.
Yeah, so I like his delivery, and then does he actually, outside of the crosses in that advanced right position, does he know what he's doing? Outside of that, not really too sure yet, but what he is quite a battling player, and has more energy than quite a few of the fullbacks we do get to see on the pitch. So
Yeah.
on that front,
So
that's why people liked him against Newcastle.
yeah. So we got Tim next.
So
My man, Timmy.
yeah, your real man Timmy is Mr. Cahill, so you can't have two Tims in your life, Adam.
Yeah, that is true.
So Eric Boonham,
He's Australian as well. So hey ho.
deep down, Eric Boonham's Australian.
No, Timmy is.
Oh,
The other
that
Timmy.
Timmy Cahill, yeah. So Eric Boonham, I'm a little bit unsure on where to categorize him, and I'll explain why. I think giving him a 7 makes sense in some categories here, but is he part of why when he has played we've been leaking goals left, right, and center? There's something about the midfield when he's in there where he's battling really competitive, but would other players in his position that play in the center, like a Ghana Gay, let's say Amadou Onana of last year, or even Oro Mangala and Abdoulaye Doucouré this year, we seem a little bit more assured when they're in that position. But I really like watching Eric Burnham play. He challenges, he's high up the field, he's pressing, and I want to see more of him.
I think with Eric Burnham, like the way he's kind of reminds me a little bit like when Iliman Ndiaye receives the ball, how he shields the ball with his body, and he plays the ball into space. His first touch is always into space, and that's what Tim does really well. So he would fend off one or two players, and he would step into the space, and he would carry the ball. Sometimes I would say like 8 out of 10, it generally comes off, but on the odd chance it doesn't, then it's obviously very risky. And the other team has a break against us. So with Tim, I think you need a player that complements him in the midfield, like a defensive minded player. So like Mangala next to him, I think works really well. I think there was one instance where the two were playing together and that actually looked quite good. Because Mangala is more of a defensive-minded midfielder, good on the tackle, good at interceptions. Or you could even have Tim and Adjusa going to Gay, and he would complement Tim quite well as well. So, yeah, but when he doesn't have that support next to him, and he's got someone like Doucouré, I think he struggles.
Yeah, so if I'm to interpret what you're saying,
even James Garner, but I think he needs more of a defensive midfielder. Yeah, so like a Mangala or a Garner Gay. I think with Tim, because he's more of a box to box midfielder, so he can carry the ball. He's passing in the final third is actually really, really good.
Yeah, I've been really excited seeing his impact up front. But to your point, Adam, I think then it's either Mangala or Ghana Gay needs to be in a role where they need to be a disciplined protector most of the time, because Eric Boonham either tracking back on runners or just potentially getting slightly out muscled in the center can happen. So you need to have other players that can sort of support him for his attacking attributes.
Yeah. Who have we got next? Is that Armstrong?
Yeah. So again, one of these we've seen. He came on. Was it just against Tottenham? He came on when we were getting walloped by someone, and outside of that, he's been on the bench. But a really exciting prospect. I hope I know that's a weird way of saying it. If we are losing and the match is over with 20 minutes to go, or with 3 goals up, which is fantasy land, I know, I want to start seeing more of Harrison Armstrong getting opportunities in the middle.
Yeah, he's very attacking, and he's very good in the final third, as from what I've seen in brief spurts.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit.
Even for the I think it was the under-21 highlights. If you watch them, they're pretty good.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'd probably put him in early. Yeah, it is such a short sample was a bit hard to say at this stage.
Yeah, and that's honestly where I kind of feel with O'Brien too, where I want to see more. It's just a little bit too early. So I think I'll give a slightly more optimistic nod to our other pacey right back.
Yeah, that's exactly where I would have put him in based off the performance against Tottenham. That's what I would have put him.
So yes, you could say he didn't have the perfect match, but we thought he would have been the cause of or we feared he would be. Don't bring him in. Son's going to just destroy him. He's going to lose all of his confidence as a young player. Not the right time to bring him in, and he actually held his own and arguably was Everton's best player in a 4-0 drubbing. What we learned is that Mickey van der Ven is slightly faster than him, but Mickey van der Ven is lightning too. When he had his first of the 2 goals that van der Ven has kind of assisted, where he just darts down the entire field and cuts back. So, but
I actually think Branthwaite could do that.
But you think okay. I think there's a world where you see Branthwaite and Van der Ven playing together, and you have the ultimate high line defense. But
yeah, that'll be us next year.
I don't think Everton can afford Van der Ven, so I don't want to keep thinking about that because that just suggests that we sell him to Tottenham.
Nah, that'll be us. That'll be us next season with the freaking group coming in. Branthwaite and Van der Ven partnership.
We'll just inject some Van der Ven lightning juice into Jake O'Brien, and we'll have our own.
Yeah, Jake O'Brien and Branthwaite. That would have been I reckon that could be a good partnership.
Yeah. So I think that. So this is. Have I missed anyone out? I made this one last night, so I got all my headshots in. I think that's been the main categories there. And if anyone on the chat wants to,
I mean, Broyo would be irrelevant, but it'd be good to see him.
That's why I didn't even bring him in.
Yeah.
So
he's still on the list, but yeah, no, he'll be in that category. Who else we got?
There might have been a couple players that played in the cup matches I wasn't able to see that we would consider. Was it like Okoronkwo or one of those kind of Metcalf and those? But I think there's no one like that's been part of the starting squad that's really underperformed or like that's worth mentioning here. But I think what's kind of scary if we look at this, 3 of the 4 of our commonly starting defenders have been on average, and I like to be positive where I can, but we've had a subpar Mikalenko, Keane, Tarkovsky, a starting right midfielder, a starting central midfielder, and one of our starting right wingers are all subpar. And I think we're a little bit generous with Ashley Young to give him a 6. And then a few of our other players that we're thinking highly of.
I think Ashley Young, even though it's subject to opinion, but based off his assists, which have actually helped us score, that's why we'll put him in that category.
Yeah, but again, I know it's still a little bit early to think back to, but on week 1, he gave away if they scored, so what? We got flogged 4-0, but being red carded as early as he did on the first week from Karim Matoma did not set a good start to the season. So the being red carded and losing a match single-handedly helping us get drubbed did not help.
No, absolutely not.
I'd say he's been a 6 to 7 the last few weeks, which is not what I was expecting to say, but I think credit where credit's due for him. So what else we've got?
Yeah, did you see the comments, Chris? Peter Collins and Danny Ellis just regarding Tim, and he needs someone to have a holding defensive midfielder behind him, which is what I was saying. Yeah, he needs like a defensive minded midfielder to complement his style of play, so he can push forward. Because when we push forward, we run into that space, but then we leave the space behind us so open and exposed. So there.
I think I think we'll get to see a little bit more of Tim, but we're also asking a lot from someone who wasn't a full-time starter at Aston Villa, and we're trying to bring him into a 90-minute machine in the Premier League. That's a big ask, but he's exceeding my expectations of what I wanted to see from someone, because he has more of an impact than we got out of forget his name now, Lewis Dobbin. So I think,
well, we're Aston Villa straight away loaned him out, so that sort of speaks.
The deal
to
has
what
worked
we've
for
done,
us.
it's worked very well for us.
Yeah. So either sitting someone behind him. So I guess the other point on sitting behind versus next to for Danny here, when we have Jared Branthwaite in the squad, maybe Eric Boonham's impact can be more obvious and more evident, because you have a more solid back line to help them. So what the other one I wanted to quickly look at was, where are we? I think it's this one. So if we looked at the current table here, Adam, we have the these fellows from across Stanley Park. We have City, Arsenal, Chelsea, which has been a surprise to a lot of people, in fourth.
You reckon the Reds are going to win?
I'm putting the current table where they're at, and then we can modify.
Oh, right, okay.
Brighton and Villa are in these 5th and 6th European spots. Newcastle sit on the fringe of the conference, and then Fulham, Spurs, Forest, and Brentford. So at the moment, I think I've got to put my hand up and say my wild card prediction of which Premier League side gets relegated, and the surprise packet. I truly didn't expect Forest or Brentford to do as well as they've been doing so far, but the season is young. And then West Ham are about as expected there. And then we have some of the more interesting ones where we have Bournemouth, Man United, Leicester, us, Ipswich, then Palace, Southampton, Wolves. So I'll zoom this in a little bit. So this is what we have right now. Do you see some of these squads staying exactly where they're at? Where do we see Everton in this picture? Who do we think gets relegated? I know it's still early, but it's kind of a fun exercise, I think, to kind of look at this and play around with it, because Arne Slot has done quite well with Liverpool, unfortunately. To say they're going to win, I think they've had a really good start with the fixtures, and Man City and Arsenal have had some blips. But to say that Liverpool aren't out of the title picture, I think would be unreasonable. But I just don't know if we see them winning.
Yeah, I think in this particular setup you got, I feel like it's either going to be Arsenal or Man City that will swap with Liverpool. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, so my original prediction was this would be the year Arsenal do it, but
yeah, I think Arsenal might do it this year as well. I think another swap you could look at would be swap Brighton and Newcastle over. I feel like Brighton won't be able to hold it together for as long.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one with Brighton. That they've got a very creative and I guess revolutionized system. The way they bring their central midfield into the fullback position or center half position on build up play, and they have quite a unique way of playing. But sometimes it works and sometimes they get completely destroyed like they did against Chelsea. So will that keep them in the European spots? You'd think that might be a little bit too risky. So to follow up on your point though, Adam, do we think that Newcastle have been that good? Because in some ways I think they've been kind of misfiring, but the second they score, they can equalize at Man City or against Man City. This perception that they're up there in European contention again. Is that fair? Well, they have Saudi backing, and they don't have fixture congestion this season. So maybe this is the year for him.
Yeah, I think they might be a bit focused, and they've got quite a bit of squad depth as well. I think they'll be all right. But yeah, that 5 to 6 position, and I think where Brighton are is probably about right. Like I think Brighton will get up further up the table over the next couple of years, but I think this year in particular, I think that looks probably a little bit better. In terms of I've got to go down to the relegation. I think like Crystal Palace are in trouble, but we've seen some decent play from Ipswich as well. But I feel like out of those lower mid tables, I think actually potentially Bournemouth or Ipswich will be one of the ones in exchange of Crystal Palace that will get relegated. I think Wolves and Southampton, where you've got it looks good. But yeah, I think I think it's either going to be.
You think Bournemouth? Huh?
I mean, yeah, I think Bournemouth potentially.
Because was it from Alphonse?
But Ipswich has started well. It's just I don't know how long they can keep it up for. If they get a few injuries for someone like Delap or someone like that, or they're one of their or Leif Davis or one of their even Greaves, like I think they could be in some trouble. So they might just fall apart.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I see Bournemouth as a wild card. My thought, honestly, is that Ipswich are just lacking that punch to get them across the line. But to the point, I guess we're all thinking about, hey, this is like week 7. A lot can happen.
Yeah.
If Everton didn't beat Crystal Palace, we'd be in the relegation zone right now. So
yeah, and obviously, like us Everton fans are praying that we don't get relegated, so we don't want to put us there. But it could obviously still happen if we don't get our shit together. But Crystal Palace, I think, have a little bit more depth, and they've got the quality. And like Eze and Mateta, if they start getting on fire, then I think they will be dangerous. Yeah, there's a prize packet this year. Even I'd actually probably say we've always known Brentford are a decent side, but yeah, Forest have been a bit of a surprise packet, and so have Fulham actually. And Fulham actually started to recruit quite well, and they've got a lot of depth as well. Like for a club like that, no disrespect to them, but they've got some really, really good quality in there.
Yeah, I have a lot of time for these clubs where let's say the Sky Sports and the pundits of the world only care about 6 to 8 clubs, and they say, Brentford, you're not supposed to be here. I'm like, that's great. Please be here and annoy those people. I really enjoy seeing clubs that are just, well, you're not part of the history. Well, you're in history right now. And I think Brentford have been doing an excellent job of that. Forest are on the flip of it, where historic club on coming back. Did you hear about that they got sued nearly $1 million or £1 million the other day?
Yeah, right. No, I didn't hear that.
So this was because of the when they played Everton last year, when Everton won 2-0, and there was these penalty shouts. And looking back on it, maybe one could be called, but a lot of these penalty shouts were like, well, I've seen them given and I've seen them not given, all in the gray area, and VAR just didn't say there were definite penalties. So the Nottingham Forest club went out of their way to make this Twitter announcement saying that the VAR Stuart Atwell is a Luton fan, therefore we can't have him in there because it benefits Luton if Forest lose and Everton win, and we're going to look at our options and all this. So they basically called him a cheat, or the VAR Stuart Atwell a cheat, because he was a Luton fan. But they actually have a rule where like you can't be okay, you can't be an Everton fan or you can't be a fan of either of the two teams playing and officiate the match. Everything else is secondary. So you could be a Liverpool fan and be the VAR for an Everton match, and in theory say, "Well, screw Everton. I hate these guys." But then that's a matter of integrity. But you know, that's what they were kind of saying with Forest and Everton. So they had that like outrageous statement of basically cheating from a referee, and he was getting a whole bunch of flack from Forest fans and claiming corruption, and then they got sued for £750,000, and then they're claiming how unfair it is, and it's like, Forest, just stop. Your social media needs to go away.
Mm.
Yeah, and looking back, I think one of them was probably a pen, but then again, that's the same penalty we didn't get last weekend. So I think if we ended up on this kind of spot, I think that's about likely. I know we'll probably wrap up here in a minute, Adam, but the only other one that I think you'll probably end up seeing by the end of this year will be something maybe like this, where United come up, West Ham have been really underwhelming. I think that continues. I
Well, it
think
could
Spurs.
potentially be Brentford or Fulham, but or not. So I think if a bit of a slip up or an injury, I think one of those teams could go into that lower table place.
Yeah, I actually think it'll probably end up being something like this by the end of it, and maybe that. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
But there's a long season to go, and the Tottenham Hotspur is a dark navy on the black backdrop, so it's hard to see them. But I enjoy watching Ange, so I've got a soft spot for Spurs' success, but not at the expense of Everton.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I think
agreed.
that's kind of where we're seeing it. And for the next couple of weeks, Adam, we've got Ipswich next Saturday. And then we have followed by Southampton, Ipswich, followed by Fulham, followed by Southampton, then West Ham, and then we have another gap there of 2 weeks, probably I think international break, followed by Brentford. So really, in the next 4 fixtures are away at Ipswich, home at Fulham, away at Southampton, and away at West Ham. Do we see victories in our horizon from that?
I potentially see a victory in the Ipswich game. I think we'll win that game 2-1. I reckon. You say the next one was Fulham?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I actually reckon we'll beat Fulham as well. But I am scared of that one because Fulham are a team that can hurt you in many different ways. And they're actually playing quite well under Marco Silva. We've seen what he's like. So they are dangerous, and that's what I'm a little bit worried about that. The Southampton game, I think we'll win that as well. I'm very optimistic at the moment, and we generally actually do quite well against West Ham, and Calvert-Lewin has a very good history and loves playing against them away as well. So I actually think we will win that game because he loves the goal against West Ham.
I think I see us getting about 5 points in the next 4.
Yeah, and then if other teams around our area drop, that could help us.
But the other thing to remember is, although these relegation battle, or I guess early relegation battle against Ipswich and Southampton at home, they have a lot of positivity. It's early in the season. These are tough matches against early promoted squads. So there's no guarantee we just walk to Southampton and get a result, even how poorly they're playing, because you know what? Everton, we aren't playing well enough to be entitled to 3 points. We have to earn this, and maybe we do that, but I'm not sure that I see a win every single match against those squads either. So I think there's going to be a lot of draws in here, maybe 1 win. I think 2 draws, a win, and a loss is my guess. But
Sounds good. See. Well, it doesn't sound good, but We'll go with that.
So, as long as Ipswich and Southampton do what Sheffield, Luton, and Burnley did last season, we'll do okay. But
Yeah.
the goal is not to be, well, the goal is to be a good squad versus better than relegation. But right now, I suppose step one is avoid relegation. Step two is play good, enticing football. And when we don't have good, enticing football right now. So
Yeah.
got to be optimistic and optimism. If you're too optimistic, we get negative. So let's just be, unfortunately, practical right now, even if I really want to see better. And maybe that happens when slowly but surely the Freakin group do their diligence and we get some restructuring. But ripping it up overnight can be disastrous too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it. And thank you for jumping on and
No
enjoy
worries.
your week. And have a time to go to bed, you crazy Brit staying up to watch us until 1 a.m. Thank you for doing so.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Up the toffees.